Hello and welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Tales from Under the Sea. Arista's Wild Ride. There you go, said Arista, patting her giant seahorse's neck. She fed him from her hand and he whinnied softly for more. No, Foamy, that's enough, she said. You don't want to get fat and slow, do you? Those seahorses sure do love you, Princess, said Mackie, the old merman who worked in the royal stables. They got away with him. Seahorses are wonderful, Mackie, Arista said, taking off Foamy's bridle. Sometimes I think they're almost as smart as mermaids. Just then, Arista and Mackie heard a whinnying off in the distance. They wished out of the stables just in time to see a proud-looking golden seahorse speed by them. Oh, isn't he beautiful? Arista whispered, not taking her eyes off him. That he is, Mackie agreed, but a wildlife like that would be harder to tame than a tidal wave. I know what you're thinking, Princess, and you can just forget it. No one can ever tame a stallion like him. But Arista wasn't listening. She was imagining herself riding that magnificent seahorse. After that, Arista thought about the wild stallion every day. Shouldn't that be like wild seahorse stallion? Okay. She would see him swimming proudly off in the distance, and knew one day she had to catch and tame him. One ride, she thought as she grew the royal seahorses. One ride and I'll know if I can tame him, but how? She wondered how. And one day Arista thought of a plan. With a large basket with one arm, she began to pick the softest, greenest seawood she could find. When she had filled her basket, Arista carefully sat down under a small cliff where she and the golden seahorse stopped for a quick moment before he swam off again. I'll just wait, Arista said, and she hid out of sight off the cliff. It wasn't before long the water began to ripple and Arista heard the familiar whinny of the wild stallion. He stopped when he spotted the basket of seaweed and then approached it cautiously. Soon he was nibbling on the tender seagrass. Now, Arista told herself, and she darted over the edge of the cliff. She wrapped her arms tightly around the seahorse's neck. The seahorse started, jerked its head off, and whinnied in alarm, but Arista held on, and they were off. Arista had never been so excited. The seahorse raced through the ocean, going faster and faster. Arista saw a blur of surprised mermen and mermaids watching her speed past. She even saw her father, but the seahorse was going so fast she couldn't even call out. Arista tried to slow the wild stallion down. She tried to pet its neck, to murmur softly to him all the things her own seahorses loved. But nothing slowed this wild one down. And now Arista was starting to worry. Getting off Foamy and the tame seahorses was easy. Just floated off and swam away. But Arista knew the seahorse was going so fast that she would probably lose her balance and go tumble head over fins if she got off now. She was afraid of knocking into the sharp coral or craggy rocks. I thought getting on was going to be the hardest part of the ride, Arista thought to herself, as the horse seemed to go even faster and she clutched her neck even tighter. Whoa, Arista said. But the seahorse did not slow down a bit. Arista and her stallion dashed by and astonished Sebastian. He saw her frightened expression. Princess! He called after her. Let go. I'm afraid, yelled Arista as the stallion picked up speed. Hang on, Sebastian called after her. Old Sebastian will save you. And he swam to the stables and mounted Foamy. Swim, Foamy, swim! And they were off. Soon they saw Arista landing back in the direction and going slower. Princess, Sebastian called, can you let go now? I can't, cried Arista. Nothing will happen if you do. Of this I assure you. Foamy will swim below you and catch you where you go. But if you prefer, I will take your hand. Oh, Sebastian, please. With most of the team looking on, Sebastian reached down. Arista reached out her arm, and instead of being pulled up by Sebastian, she pulled him down. Oh no, we're both gonna get stuck. Arista shouted to Sebastian, who grabbed a lock out of the seahorse's mane. Princess, this is very fast indeed. Sebastian was afraid to let go. The golden seahorse turned around and swam toward Foamy, who was now below them. It is time now, Princess. We shall both go at once. I'll count to 3 and Foamy will fetch you up once you are on his back. 1, 2, 3. Arista closed her eyes, clenched her teeth, and let go. She did, landed right on Foamy. But where's Sebastian? Still locked inside the mane with his claws. With the eyes of the kingdom on him, Sebastian knew he had to let go. The little crab tumbled over and over again, landing in Arista's basket of seaweed. Nothing much, but Sebastian's pride was wounded. As his friends applauded, he brushed some seaweed off and took a bow. Arista rode up on Foamy. The golden seahorse had disappeared off in the distance. Sebastian, are you alright? She asked. But of course, Princess. Just do me a large favor and do not try such activities again. Replied the crab, trying to get rid of all the last of the seaweed. But Sebastian, don't you think a few more rides like that would tame him? Arista's cheeks were rosy and her eyes were glowing. Princess, just one ride like that was enough for me. The only thing I'm just interested in now is that the musical pieces I will conduct. I'm going to the concert hall for some peace and quiet. And Sebastian scurried off, leaving Arista to dream of her next encounter with a wild seahorse. And that is the end of that story. Thanks for listening. See ya.